What's up, guys? My name is Ansley, and I am probably one of the most competitive people I know. Being competitive isn't just about the big things, but it's about the little ones too. I want to be the first one to yell, "I got front seat," while getting into the car. I want to be the first to cross the line in a friendly family game of Mario Kart. And I'm even trying to get you 2-0 in a game of rock, paper, scissors. And as you can imagine, game nights with friends are usually a little bit tough for me. I'm always trying to toe that line of pretending like I don't care too much, but also making sure you know I'm going to crush you. But if I lose, it's not pretty. Is that just me? Or I don't know. Here's the thing. Sometimes when I pause long enough to think about what I'm doing, I even shock myself a little bit. Think about some of the language we use when we're competing. Have you ever caught yourself saying something like, "I crushed that test," "I slayed that performance," "I dominated the court"? It all sounds and feels a little bit violent. Dramatic even. It's like we can't just win. We have to annihilate the competition. And this language is all around us. Watch 2 minutes of ESPN or check what movies crush the competition in the box office or what artists are currently destroying each other with diss tracks. Don't get me wrong, I'm guilty of it too. Maybe it's sports for you, or maybe it's your class rank. Maybe it's being more popular or having the most followers. Whatever it is, we all have areas where we feel the pressure to perform, prove ourselves, or come out on top. But what if that mindset is holding us back from becoming the people we were meant to be? What if in our quest to be the best, we're missing out on something even better? And why is it that our definition of success, achievement, includes the destruction of someone or something else? You can summarize the root of all of this complexity in one word: pride. In this new series we're calling Take a Bow, we want to talk about this normal human struggle head on. The reality is, it's trickier than you think. It often seems like the only two options are to think we're better than everyone or to shrink into the background. Think about it this way. This circle represents your life. Inside the circle is everything you think makes you valuable, everything that gives your life meaning and purpose. To us, it can feel like there are only two ways to fill that circle. Option one leads to pride. This is when we define our worth by our accomplishments and how we stack up against others. Our whole identity gets wrapped up in being better than everyone else. Some common examples might be achieving success at the cost of relationships or other people, elevating your own sense of value by cutting others down or making them feel insignificant, doing things only for appearances instead of doing genuinely hard work to become better. But what's the alternative? For a lot of people, especially if you struggle with self-confidence, it can feel like the only other option is to make yourself small, to leave that circle blank because you've bought into the idea that you can't compete with the people around you. So why even bother? I think we've all felt this way at times. Like when you scroll through TikTok and see all these extraordinary people with incredible lives and you feel like you're never ever going to measure up. Or when you try out and don't get the spot and you wonder if you're just not talented enough. Or when you pour your heart into a relationship only to get ghosted or rejected and start to question what's wrong with you. In those moments, it's really easy to want to fade into the background, to numb out with YouTube binges or endless scrolling because facing the world feels too difficult. What if we don't feel like we measure up? If we're not the best at something, does that mean we don't matter at all? I don't know about you, but I don't love either of those options. Unhealthy pride feels fake and isolating, but shrinking into the background doesn't help anyone either. It's a lose-lose situation. So what do we do? Can we be confident but not prideful? Can we be humble but not insecure or invisible? Is that even possible? In an ancient letter meant to help Christians understand what it means to follow Jesus, James, the brother of Jesus, addresses this competitive thing in all of us with an interesting solution. James writes this: "Humble yourselves before the Lord." 9 verses before this, James said that the recipients of this letter want what they don't have, and that's why there's so much drama with them. And James says that this posture of humility is the solution to this quest to be the best. Centuries before, King Solomon also shared that humility is the way God intends us to live. True humility and fear of the Lord lead to riches, honor, and long life. So God wants us to be humble. It's valuable. But what does humility look like? As we said, we usually feel like we should approach life with pride or by shrinking back. We can either accomplish, or cower. But what if neither of those two ways is what God intended for us? The reality of our lives is this: we serve a God who made us. God gave us our abilities and strengths, and God knows our weaknesses and struggles. and God is in love with who we are. The problem with the two approaches we normally take, being prideful or shrinking back, is that we've put too much weight and value on what we think other people think about us. But what if we don't think about other people's possible opinions at all? What if we could just be who we were made to be, and we don't look to the right or to the left at what other people may be thinking? We put blinders on and only focus on what God says about us. What if we decided to trust God's view of us over anything else? There is a beautiful rabbinical teaching that might help us learn how to live humbly well. The Hebrew word anava is translated as humility. Many years after Solomon wrote several of his proverbs about humility, rabbis introduced the idea that anava means to occupy your God-given space in the world. Humility means to color to the edges of your space. The idea of anava means not overestimating yourself or your abilities, but also not underestimating them. It's being exactly who God created you to be. The big idea is don't leave your space blank. Occupying your God-given space in the world is the opposite of pride because it doesn't need to prove anything. But it's also the opposite of putting yourself down all the time because it recognizes that you have worth and value given to you by God, even on your worst days. In other words, true humility isn't about beating yourself up or pretending you're worthless. It's about taking the focus off yourself or others and putting it on what God says. Suddenly, our worth isn't based on how we stack up against everyone else. It's not about being the smartest, the prettiest, or the most talented. It's about being loved by the creator of the universe, period. When we start to see ourselves the way God sees us, it frees us up to be more confident, not less. We can relax and be who we were made to be. At the same time, we stay humble, knowing our confidence is rooted not in what we achieve or the work we put in, but because we're worth everything to God. God's created us in God's image. God gave us incredibly unique value that nothing can take from us. Our confidence can come from that. So how do we put this into practice? How do we learn to live the balance of humility and confidence? James put it simply a little later in his letter. He wrote, "Draw near to God, and He will draw near to you." Proximity changes your perspective. Whatever or whomever you stay close to determines how you see things. And as James writes, when we humble ourselves before the Lord, when we draw near to God, we begin to see ourselves correctly. We start seeing ourselves as God sees us. And what does it look like to draw near to God? It means spend time with God. Set aside a few minutes each day to read the Bible and reflect on what it reveals about Him and His love for you. Make time for God, even when life is hectic. Talk to God in prayer. Don't worry about sounding scholarly or spiritual. Just be real with God about your joys, struggles, and gratitude. God wants to hear from you. Surround yourself with people who point you to God. We need others to remind us of the truth and encourage us when we're down. Find those people in your life and be that person for others. Each of these are not just homework assignments or religious boxes to check. They're designed to help us follow the way of Jesus closely, to help us live as Jesus lived, do what Jesus said to do, and to become more like Jesus. Over time, these practices free us up to live with confidence that doesn't need to put others down to prop itself up. We can celebrate our success without rubbing them in anyone's face. We can admit our failures without thinking they define us. We can cheer other people on because their achievements do not threaten us. This is one of those things that I love most about Jesus. If there was anyone who could have put on the most swagger and pride possible, it was God in a human body. But instead, He humbled Himself. He was confident enough not to demand everyone's respect and confident enough to speak up when His time came. He's the perfect example of humility. In other words, we can follow Jesus' example and experience everything we're talking about. He'll give us a sense of meaning and purpose that goes way beyond what other people think about us. So, how can you draw near to God this week? Whatever it is, take that step. Because when we draw near to God, God draws near to us. As you do, remember this. Don't leave your space blank. There's another way, a better way. It starts with humbling ourselves before God, who loves us more than we could possibly imagine. When we do that, everything else starts to fall into place. When you head to groups, I want you to think about your response to this question. Who do you know who you would say is truly humble?